We are in a special place today with a special guest. His name is Morris Jackson Brooks, better known as Mo Brooks, congressman from the 5th District in Alabama and running for the United States Senate. Congressman Brooks, thank you so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Just real quick, I don't want to dwell on this, but the baseball game, the baseball situation where, as we look back on it, this guy had your name on a list of people that he didn't like. It had to be life-changing for you in some manner.
Well, it's not often that you're subject to a potential political assassination.
Yeah.
There were 6 names on a list with our office numbers that suggested that he had 6 people in particular that he thought were conservative leaders. And by killing us, it would do the most good to the socialist cause of the Bernie Sanders wing of society.
Yeah.
It is sobering. It does make you a little bit more wary. I'm a little bit cognizant, for example, right now, where everybody is sitting and where the movement is.
Sure, I don't blame you.
More so than I otherwise might be. And
well,
that's just a part of it.
Had to be a terrible experience. But let's get into something that I'm interested in. But before that, let's talk about you a little bit. Tell us about, other than the 5th District, a congressperson, just Mo Brooks, where'd you come from? What's your heritage? Tell us about you.
Well, I'm a product of my parents. My dad's engineer, University of Tennessee grad. My mom's retired high school teacher in Huntsville, Alabama. They were both born in Waynesville, North Carolina, in the Smokies. My mom, by way of example, when they were growing up, they didn't have electricity. Yeah. They also had an outhouse, and they couldn't wait for the Sears catalog to come because it meant that you could use the old Sears catalog instead of the corn cobs. Right. So that's the kind of background my family comes from. My dad, he served in World War II during the latter part of the war as a combat engineer with General Patton's Army. Wow. And all those things, going through the Great Depression that they went through, going through World War II that they went through, they tried to make sure that the kids knew that you act ethically, and you have to work for a living, and if you're given an education, by golly, you better take advantage of it. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of things that molded me as a person to where I am now. Went through Duke University in 3 years with a double major in economics and political science, Alabama Law School, prosecutor in Tuscaloosa for a couple of years, prosecutor in Madison County as a district attorney for a short period of time, 4 times elected to the legislature, 4 times elected to the county commission, 4 times elected to the United States Congress, and with the exception of the full-time positions to which I serve the public, with those exceptions, my primary source of income came from my law practice. For the last 20 years, by way of example, I was the chief litigation counsel for America's largest distributor of roofing, siding, and windows out of Beloit, Wisconsin. And they retained our law firm. My partner was chief counsel, in-house counsel for that business, and I was chief litigation counsel that would go around the country as the need arose for a multi-billion-dollar-a-year company. Okay, so now I think probably this is something that people just never knew about you, and it's fascinating to see your background, because your background is a regular guy almost with a family and a job, and so you've had experience in the real world. And I think this is something a lot of politicians just don't have. Well, I admitted something now that you bring that up. Lovely wife for 41 years. Yep. She's been my sweetheart ever since I met her at Duke University. 4 wonderful kids. We've been blessed in that regard. 3 wonderful kids-in-law and 8 wonderful grandchildren. And they all live close to us in Alabama. Isn't that great? So I'm thankful that our state has an economy where our family could stay together. Speaking of the economy, there's so much going on in the Huntsville area, but around the state with this airplane that may be built in Alabama that people are working on. So where do you stand on all this? I mean, where does Mo Brooks stand on bringing more business back and keeping business, the auto plants and so on here in Alabama? Well, there are 2 aspects to that question. One, I'm a believer in Ronald Reagan's adage that a rising tide lifts all boats. Sure. And so if we can implement proper free enterprise policies in Washington, D.C., free enterprise being an economic model that has been proven to work as contrasted to this experiment with socialism that has been proven to fail in every nation that has ever tried Never worked. If we will go with free enterprise, then that's the tide that lifts all boats. Sure. Now, more specifically with the state of Alabama, what we have to do as United States Senator is make sure that when our country needs things done, by way of example with national defense, it might be the Austell facility with a littoral combat ship in Mobile Bay. It might be Fort Rucker with helicopters and the training associated with that.
Sure.
It might be at the Anniston Army Depot. It might be at Redstone Arsenal.
Right.
We've got to make sure that the rest of the country knows that we've got an excellent workforce that can achieve those things that are needed for national security.
Right.
And so when you can market the state of Alabama, it's incumbent upon you as a United States Senator to do so.
Speaking of national security, build the wall and immigration. And finally the Supreme Court has said, okay, we can stop people coming from certain countries. Where do you stand there? Where do you stand on the wall? Where do you stand on immigration as it stands right now today? And we're taping this in the middle of July, so a lot of things can change, but where do you stand on it personally?
There is no one in the United States Congress that has a stronger border security record than I do. No one. Jeff Sessions and I used to be able to compete with each other, but of course he's no longer there. He went to become Attorney General.
Right.
And I say that based on the groups that evaluate our border security records. Who's willing to fight to stop illegal aliens and the damage that they do by taking American jobs on the one hand or suppressing the wages of our workforce on the other as employers try to hire cheaper illegal alien labor rather than the labor of American citizens. And with one of them, by way of example, Numbers USA, I've had a perfect A+ 100% score for 6 straight years. That means that on border security issues, Mo Brooks is #1 out of 435 congressmen and 100 senators. So I am very strongly in favor of the rule of law, and I'm for, from an economic standpoint, helping the American people understand that the more of this foreign labor we import into our country, the more damage we're doing to struggling American families trying to find a job that'll help them be self-sufficient.
How about the Second Amendment? Where will you stand?
Second Amendment right to bear arms. I've been endorsed by the NRA 3 different times, 2012, 2014, 2016, by Gun Owners of America. The Second Amendment, quite frankly, is the amendment that ensures that all the other amendments in the Bill of Rights, all the other provisions in the United States Constitution are respected and not usurped by an effort to overthrow the central government of the United States of America, as has happened in other nations around the world that do not have a Second Amendment right to bear arms.
Okay, one thing that's one of my pet things is term limits. I know that we do have term limits in such a way because if after a while somebody, but I've seen people, and you have too, that have been in the House of Representatives for 40 years. Do you think it's time for term limits now as you move to the Senate? Not that you've been elected yet, but as you're moving toward the Senate.
Hey, I'm hoping you're a sage and a prophet.
From my lips to God's ears. What about term limits?
Well, I've long been in favor of a constitutional amendment. 12 years is the max. 12 years as a senator, or 12 years as a House member. That seems to be a good period of time. But having said that, it's not going to get through this United States Congress. The only way to get a constitutional amendment for term limits is via an Article 5 of the United States Constitution, have a convention, Article 5 convention, where, by way of example, we ought to be pushing for a balanced budget constitutional amendment. We can also push for term limits. But that's the only vehicle by which we're going to be able to accomplish either of those 2 goals. Right
now, you don't think with the Congress being the House, the Senate, and the presidency, that still isn't possible?
No.
No. That's pretty
There's
definite.
too much self-interest. That's why we don't have a balanced budget. There's too much self-interest in getting elected, and a lot of congressmen and senators have discovered that the best way to make people happy is to spend other people's money. And we do that by borrowing money from our children and grandchildren, money that it does not look like they're going to be able to afford to pay back, and it's very much a betrayal.
Well, before we conclude today, I would like you to just tell the folks, why you want to be senator from Alabama to the United States Senate.
Well, the reason I want to be in the United States Senate is because that's where our conservative beliefs have gone to die. And if we continue to elect establishment senators, then we should expect to continue to get results that are unsatisfactory. We need conservative, principled people in the United States Senate. And in that vein, what I offer is on 2 different levels. One is ethics, very important. In 30+ years of public service as a prosecutor, legislator, county commissioner, and congressman, I've never had a single ethics complaint filed against me with the Alabama Ethics Commission or any federal government ethics oversight agency. The second thing that I offer that no other candidate offers is, again, with that 30+ years of experience in public service in a variety of different kinds, I've got a record of conservative leadership that you can look at. And a lot of candidates, they're going to tell you that if you'll vote for me, I'll do this, that, or the other. And a lot of times people are disappointed and frustrated because those candidates don't do what they told you they would do. With me, you've got that track record, thousands upon thousands of votes that establish that I'm a full spectrum conservative, the kind of conservative, by way of example, over 9 other conservatives who's been endorsed by Laura Ingraham, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, fellow Alabama Congressman Mike Rogers. The list goes on and on. People who are familiar with my record, they know that if you elect Mo Brooks to the United States Senate, you're getting a conservative you can depend on. There's no guesswork there.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time. Good seeing
Thank you.
you. Be sure to vote.